Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for joining this webinar. My name is Ngozi Ibokwe. I'm in the Master of Leadership and Development program at Drake University. During the day, I work at Nationwide Insurance as an underwriter. Today, what I'm going to talk to you guys about is feedback. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we do have a packed agenda today. First, we'll go ahead and talk about why feedback is difficult for some people to hear. We'll talk then about how to send feedback. We'll talk about emotions and feedback, and then we'll end with a wrap up. So we'll dive in. First, we're going to go ahead and start with a poll. If you guys could go on the website on your screen, www.menti.com, and use the code 380163. The question you're going to answer is, do you like to receive feedback? So I'll go ahead and play some music. When the music stops, we'll go ahead and see what everyone said for their answers. All right, so we'll go ahead and see what the results are for us. All right, so we got 2 answers in to do you like to receive feedback? The majority of people said no. Well, good news about that, guys, is that you're not alone. Most people do not like to receive feedback. So the truth is, whether you like it or not, feedback is a part of life. So usually you'll hear sometimes people say feedback is a gift. So if feedback is a gift, why do we always not like to receive it? Well, even though we know how beneficial it is, it can make us feel threatened when we receive it. And as a result of it making us feel threatened, we avoid it altogether. So over the past weekend, I found a really cool article, and it talks about how receiving feedback can activate the emotional area of our brain, which is known as the amygdala. So this can actually trigger our survival senses, leading to a fight or flight reaction. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar or know of Sarah Noel Wilson. She does teach the Innovation and Future class here at Drake University. She often talks about the amygdala and talks about it in conjunction with the fight or flight reaction. I just thought that was a cool thing to point out. So when it comes to feedback, we're kind of at a crossroads, if you will. So we want to be appreciated, feel good about ourselves, avoid threats, and at the same time, we want to know how we're doing so that we can develop and improve. So on one end of the spectrum, we want to get that, we want to know how we're doing so we can improve, but on the other side, we don't want to be in a position where we feel threatened. So no pain, no gain doesn't just apply to bodybuilders. If we can get over our initial avoidance reaction, we'll be more open to receiving feedback. All right, so any questions before we move along? If you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat. So as you guys know, there's so many benefits to feedback. One of them is that feedback can help us be aware of our performance blind spots. So usually Oftentimes it takes another person to tell us what we're doing wrong. Sometimes when we kind of get focused and in the swing of things, we fail to realize that we're not doing maybe as best as we could. So we'll go ahead here and take another poll. You guys could go to www.menti.com and use a code 146090. The question that we're gonna answer is, who is responsible for starting the feedback conversation? So the choices are, is it the person that's giving the feedback, or is it the person receiving the feedback? So I'll give you guys about 60 seconds to answer when the music starts. When the music starts, you can just take your time to go through that. When it ends, that's when we'll kind of wrap up together and figure out what the majority of you guys say. All right, so we'll go ahead and see what the majority of you guys say. All right, 2 people in there said the person receiving the feedback, and you guys are correct. Luckily, you guys knew this before that I did, because I used to think that it was up to those around me to provide me with the feedback that I was needing. So good job with that. So now I want you guys to take some time to think a little bit. When was the last time you asked for feedback? While you're thinking about it, think about the last few times you asked for feedback. Was it from the same person? Or was it from a different person each time? Give you guys just a couple more seconds to think about it. No need to put it in the chat. It's just something to think about. So it can be tempting for us to seek feedback from the same person or resource because it's comfortable for us. But in order to get the full picture of how we're performing, we need to get feedback from different sources and different people. So I know this is something that I'm guilty of too. Some months ago, I noticed myself always seeking feedback from the same group of people or the same resources. But then one day I just thought, I just need to change this up. Maybe I'm not getting the feedback that that I'm really seeking. So then I thought, I looked to see if I could find some different people to seek feedback from, and I got some really great results from that. So it's always nice to kind of switch it up and try something new every now and again, just so that you're opening your mind to other people's thoughts and things like that. So what we're going to talk about now is we're going to talk about ways to guide a feedback conversation. So the first thing is we're going to discuss is giving permission. The second is sharing our own reflections. Third is asking for specific examples. And then the fourth is going to be checking for understanding. So we'll touch base on each one of these a little bit more in depth. So when we talk about giving permission, what we mean by this is we want to make sure that we're upfront and honest with the people that we want feedback from. So by telling somebody that we want their feedback, they'll be more comfortable with giving you that feedback. Another thing that's really important to do is share your thoughts, because it makes it easier for the person that's giving you the feedback. What it does is it helps them better understand your perspective and the challenges that you're facing. And ultimately, it's going to help them provide the best feedback possible. The next one is to consider what sort of feedback that you're looking for. So it's much easier for someone to give you one piece of feedback or to focus on something specific. So like, for example, if you have examples that you can provide them, or if you have scenarios where they can give you that specific feedback, it just makes it more easier for them to provide what you're looking for. The last one is we're going to want to make sure we check for understanding. So we want to check that they understand what's been said. We also want to make sure that they have all the information and that nothing is left unclear. So we're going to pause and reflect again. The last time you received feedback, did you use any of the tactics that were just discussed? Whether it was give permission, share your own reflections, ask for specific examples, check for understanding. Did you use any of those unintentionally? And if you didn't, do you think that it would have made the feedback conversation better if you had used one of those? No need to put it in the chat. It's just something for you guys to kind of think about and reflect on. All right, so an important thing to consider when it comes to feedback is emotions. So emotions can easily take a hold of us while we're receiving it, because it can cause us to check out of the conversation. So I'm sorry, emotions can really cause us to check out of the conversation if they overpower the conversation. So I'll just kind of let you think about that for a little bit. So have there been times where you're receiving feedback and the emotions just kind of overpower the whole thing, where you're not really even able to focus on the feedback that was given? I know that's happened to me a time or two. So there's actually different triggers that can elicit an emotional response to some feedback that you're given. So the three triggers that I'm going to touch base on is the identity trigger, the relationship trigger, and the trait trigger. So the identity trigger is when something about the feedback makes us question ourselves. So this can happen when the feedback undermines how we see ourselves and threatens our sense of safety or well-being. So maybe in the sense that, when you're receiving the feedback, you're like, is there something wrong with me? Or, something of that nature. The next one is a relationship trigger. So this is when we question the feedback due to the relationship we have with the person giving it. So this could be like a family member, this could be a cousin, it could be a relative, could be a coworker, any of that. So it could be the way the person's delivering the feedback that makes us doubtful, or it could be some previous conflicts that we've had with the person that makes us kind of question that feedback. The last trigger that we're going to talk about is the truth trigger. So this is when we dispute the truth behind the feedback. So the reason why we do it is because the feedback seems wrong or just not something that we feel like we're doing. So we don't take it on board because we question its accuracy and consider it as poor and unfair. So something about this is that when we have this emotion, we might want to take a look at ourselves and really think, is this true about me? This could be a time where you want to ask more than one person for the feedback instead of just relying on one person alone, Because if multiple people are telling you something that you feel is not true, then you might want to take a look at yourself and kind of reevaluate things a little bit. So by understanding these triggers and identifying what set them over, we become more engaged in the feedback conversations. So if we're aware ahead of time that we might feel this type of way, we can kind of get ahead of it and then be more engaged in the conversation and make for a better conversation. All right, so we'll go ahead with another question here to get some activity going. So if you guys could go to www.menti.com and use the code 695479. So question here is, you've just received an insightful piece of feedback. What do you do first? So when you get that feedback, what's the first thing that you do? So the options you have is take time to reflect on what you heard or use the feedback to make a change right away. So just like the other two times, I'll put the music on, give you guys a chance to answer. When the music turns off, then we'll go ahead and regroup and see what the group thinks. All right, so we'll go ahead and look and see what everyone said. Good job. So when you guys receive feedback, you first take time to reflect on what you heard. That is ideal. So when we receive feedback, the first thing we need to do is make sure we have all the information, understand the meaning, and remove any uncertainty. So the first thing we're going to want to do is just reflect on what we heard. We don't want to just rush and make a change right away because we want to validate the feedback before we do that. So very good job. So as we wrap things up, I just want to know if you guys have any questions before we move along. We're pretty much about ready to end this thing here. So if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat. So feedback is a free and valuable tool for helping us improve our performance. We naturally find it difficult to deal with, just as humans, things that we're doing wrong, it's kind of sometimes hard to hear those things. The thing is that when we can put our emotions aside, we're better able to understand the feedback we receive and use it to help us in the way to reaching our full potential. So if we can just put our emotions aside, take a deep breath, really get a chance to understand where the other person is coming from with the feedback, then we're going to be more apt to having those conversations. The whole purpose of feedback is just to help us get better, develop ourselves, and even develop those around us. I hope you guys enjoyed this webinar today. If you have any questions, please send me an email. I'm always available. But yeah, go ahead and enjoy the rest of your day and have a good weekend. Bye.